RV parks and a final plat of Nama's Temple Townhomes. So Jason is the case manager, I guess, for all three zoning cases, right? And so in addition to the RV park CUPs, there is also a little bit of a cleanup zoning case, number 5, which is located at 2 Woodland Trail. And so this is, if you're familiar with far west, uh, West Adams out towards Temple Lake Park, there is actually it's a gas station that used to be Roma's and is being converted to a gas station. And they have that tiny little section on the backside that really just needs to be cleaned up from a zoning perspective. Their permit, I believe, has been, you know, it better have been issued because they've been doing a lot of work. So yes, I'm pretty sure it's been issued, but so just zoning cleanup on that one. That is, I think, fairly self-explanatory. And that and the VFW to the south are in the city limits, but most of the surrounding properties are not. All right, so there's that one. And then the number 6, the CUP for the RV park, this one on State Highway 53 and Dairy Road. And then the next one, State Highway 36. And so I've asked Jason just to give a quick update also on code amendments that for RV parks based on council direction. So number 7 didn't actually come to P&Z, but they were prepared to, but there were questions about RV parks and council wanting to get out ahead of them. And so the bottom line is we've been working very closely with Lena Chate, the engineer for both of those projects, and to be able to incorporate those standards into these CUPs. So Jason can give just a quick overview on that one. And then the plat at 202 South 41st Street is for proposed townhomes, just an infill development over, yeah, there you go, kind of near Salmons. And so before I turn it over to Jason, do you have any questions?
That was the question, is what was going on with RV parks
Yeah.
and from that long council.
And that's why they're both on the same agenda, because there had been questions by council that, and those applicants and led by Ms. Chate have been working with us to, to extend contracts and to be able to get guidance from council and to be part of those workshops. And so here we are with some proposed standards. And let me go ahead and turn it over.
Have those standards been approved or?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. So, and if you all want to also just get a little bit more detail about those at a future workshop, we can do that as well. But with these 2 items on the agenda, I thought, hey, we need to at least give you a heads up about them. All right. Thank you. Jason.
Sure. So good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. We spent a lot of time last summer and fall talking about what does our code allow? What kind of RV park developments do we think we're going to get? How do other cities and municipalities regulate RV parks? And what's going to be working best for Temple? Here's what we came up with. One, just look at how close the proposed park is to other similar developments. There was concern that, if there's a bunch all crammed into one area, maybe that's not a great idea. But maybe there's places where it's not a problem for 2 parks to be close to each other. There was not a good way to write a code requirement that would address every possible situation. The easiest way, and I think the most common sense, is just show them on a map and then describe what's, if you know the area, and I can describe what's the general pattern around, then people can make up their own minds. It's a conditional use permit, so there's subjectivity. So you can look at what other developments around, and we'll show you a map for both of these cases tonight. The next one was that the applicant shall provide a copy of the rules and regulations. The city's not getting into the management of parks. We are not telling them what the rules should be. Now, with my research, I went around, visited some parks, pulled other rules off the internet of what they have published for their policies. A lot of similarity, a lot of common sense. Quiet hours, no teenagers unaccompanied at the swimming pool, don't leave trash around your trailer, different regulations about what would convert an RV into a permanent dwelling like skirting or a porch or a carport, no fireworks, no illegal drugs. A lot of similarities. From the parks that I talked to, they all said that they started with a, basic list of rules. And as the time went by and weird situations cropped up, this is why we can't have nice things. We just added a rule, and the rules tend to grow over time. So we're not telling them what their rules are, just that they should have them. And then the last one, and these would all be criteria for a conditional use permit, is to show that there's going to be some turn lanes or acceleration and deceleration lanes at the entrance to the park, given that, RVs, motorhomes, travel trailers, they speed up, they slow down slowly. They travel on the roadway differently than other vehicles. That should be considered. We debated just making a traffic impact analysis mandatory. And that could be expensive. It may be necessary, but may not be necessary in all cases. And what we settled on was, if the applicant is going to show that they're going to make the improvements, then we're not going to fault that. If they decide, hey, this area doesn't make sense for acceleration lanes, we don't want to do it, it's not that big of a park, that's going to go through the Director of Public Works and Engineering. If they disagree, then the answer is show us the TIA that supports your claim. Show me the numbers. That matches what we've done with other developments where residential subdivision was proposed on state roads. TxDOT would have required a TIA. They said, look, we're going to do a divided entrance. We're going to add you right turn lanes in and out of the project. We'll pay for a center turn lane, widen the pavement to address that traffic. Without spending the money on the TIA, common sense says we all think it's necessary. And in that case, TxDOT says we concur. We don't need the TIA. You're going to build the improvements that would have been recommended from the TIA. So that's what we settled on for the RV parks, to really treat them similar to other projects. The other proposed changes come out of Chapter 31. So the CUP governs the approval, whether or not a RV park should go there. And then Chapter 31 really gets into, if it's approved through the CUP, what are the development standards? What are the requirements? One of the things that we've looked at is the permanent residency, the requirement for a guest register, and those requirements are all over the chapter. As I went through, was trying to read it, found myself flipping back and forth. So the first recommendation is, let's apply some common sense and put things together that go together. So we'll group those sections together and clarify, the city does have the right to inspect, but what the park is liable, what are they responsible for showing the city? Is it for fire marshal? Is it for code compliance? Or is it for the guest register? One of the things that would go on that guest register is long-term occupancy. Right now, the code does not allow permanent residency, and it caps it at 180 days. We're not proposing to allow permanent residency. What we're proposing to recognize is the reality that we've seen in the area. Most of the folks coming to this area are not coming for tourism, they're coming for work. They're coming on employment contracts. It could be 9 months or a year. Current code, they would have to move, and they may or may not be following that. If it had been a problem, we probably would have realized that by now. Something would have come to our attention. So what we're looking at is there's some logical situations where a person may come and stay in that RV park for longer than 6 months. And it could be documented, an employment contract, military orders. You're a caregiver, you got dads in the hospital, or your wife's going through chemotherapy. it's not really logical to stay in a hotel for 6 months, but if you have an RV, maybe that makes sense for your situation. It could be the park host or the park employees. Bel Air, for example, there's a apartment on the upstairs of the management building. The manager lives at Bel Air Junction. So we would just codify that. During the workshop with council, another gentleman brought up a great idea, which we saw in this area just last summer: displaced persons, natural disasters. Your house is unlivable and you have to go somewhere. So that's something that could be documented. You've got insurance claim, you've got damage report, you've got a contractor agreement that your house is being repaired, but while it's being repaired, you're gonna stay in the RV park for a few months. So if you stray past that 180 days, you're not in violation. The park is not in violation. And the guest register, which is something that would be inspected, that would show who are the long-term stays. So we send someone out there from code compliance, show me your register. You've got 5 people listed as long-term. They're, showed they arrived such and such date. They're beyond that 180 days. Show me their documents. Here's a copy of his Army orders. No problem. The last one, there was some discussion of the screening. Being able to see the park from a main road may not be a great thing. So the recommendation, have an average separation of 300 feet. And we're going to show you 2 examples of that tonight, so that there's some buffering between the public street and the park boundary, and have maybe a minimum acreage for that lot. So that would be reserved for some type of commercial development, retail, or some other use that provides some separation from the park to the street. And then cleaning up language that talks about the lighting on the internal streets and the facilities. Right now it says recommended, or that there should be lighting. Let's just make it clear where the lighting is necessary.
Jason, since there's only about a minute or so left.
Yep.
One of the things I thought from council, or the discussions were talked about, is the placement of where an RV park would be allowed in the city, outside the city. I think these are on 53 and whatever else,
Right.
36. But was there something talked about like inner city not allowing one right in if somebody owned 50 acres right in the smack dab of the city or something like that?
It did come up, but that was one we just couldn't settle on. There's a logic play.
Already addressed with the base zoning.
Correct. Because you're only going to have it in ag zoning. So ag with a CUP is the only zoning district where you can have an RV park.
Okay. So it would come up as a CUP anyway.
Right.
Okay. And then council is supposed to approve the UDC?
We don't have a date when we're going to take these code recommendations back to council, hopefully soon.
The CUP language will come to you all.
First.
I failed to mention that.
Okay.
Chapter 31 doesn't require your approval, but because the zoning portion of that, his previous slide is part of the EDC, y'all will make the recommendation to council.
Got it.
So we can give the full presentation, but just clarify what you're acting on.
When that time comes. Okay.
There's something, because it's an RV park, like dump stations. Is there something in the code about kind of septic is requirements, stuff like that?
Yeah, they've got to have the hookups. It's either there's the hookups at the pads, or there's a central dump station.
Yeah.
That's all the septic requirements are reviewed by the Bell County Health if it's on septic.
Mhm.
So far, all the parks that we've seen have been on septic.
Yeah.
If it was on sewer, then that would go through our public works engineer department. They would look at the capacity, volume.
And there's something in chapter 31 related to dumping, just in terms of appropriate processes for, hey, you've got, there's, got to hook up, dumping stations,
Yeah.
or making sure that, hey, you don't just dump it in the forest behind you. Kind of.
No, National Lampoon's shitter's full. We got our first camper this summer, so I'm learning a lot about this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and that was one of the, I know we're close on time, but it was, one of those fine points of what is our job to regulate and what should be the park policy. And it gets into that permanent dwelling. One of the I'm gonna say criteria, the factors, is not having hard plumbing from the RV to the sewer hookup. It's some type of flexible pipe. And I visited a few and stayed one, and yeah, it was interesting to see how they set those up with the
We've got these
braces, so
little
you have a
bracket things that
constant
like
flow.
kind of like hold it up.
Yeah,
It flows better. My husband handles that.
Right, so if you look at the different rules, they've got specifications of what that flexible pipe, what that connection should be. That'll be handled at the park policy level. It won't be a code enforcement level for us.
Okay, moving on. May I have a volunteer for the invocation, please? May I have a volunteer for the pledge? Okay. Tiffany, do we have any affidavits?
Commissioners, for the record, no affidavits to abstain have been received for this meeting. Is this correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Is there any additional business? If not, the work